Orenthal James Simpson, O.J. to the world, wasn't just a football player. He was a hero, a man who turned raw talent into celebrity, fame, and fortune. Born in San Francisco in 1947, O.J. grew up poor, in a world where opportunity was rare and racism was constant. But on the football field, none of that mattered. He was lightning in human form, fast, graceful, unstoppable. By the late 1960s, playing for the USC Trojans, O.J. had become a national sensation. He won the Heisman Trophy in 1968, college football's highest honor, and soon after joined the NFL's Buffalo Bills. Fans loved him. Brands wanted him. He wasn't just a football star. He was America's face of success. In an age when racial barriers still loomed, O.J. was the exception. He appeared in commercials, movies, and talk shows. He smiled. He charmed. He transcended color, or so it seemed. That one line, both proud and tragic, would haunt him forever. In 1977, O.J. met Nicole Brown, a young, beautiful waitress from California. He was already married then, but their chemistry was undeniable. They married in 1985. A golden couple living a golden life. Mansions in Brentwood, parties with Hollywood elites, children, cameras. Everything seemed perfect. But behind the smiles, cracks were forming. Nicole's friends saw bruises. Police were called more than once. Reports of screaming, arguments, fear. O.J.'s charm had a darker side, one that Nicole lived with, silently, for years. In 1989, O.J. was arrested for spousal abuse. He pleaded no contest, and the world barely noticed. He was still O.J., America's golden boy. By 1992, Nicole filed for divorce. She wanted peace, safety, and freedom. But some love stories don't end cleanly. It was a Sunday night, June 12th, 1994. Nicole had dinner with family and friends at a small restaurant called Mezzaluna, not far from her Brentwood home. Among the staff was a young waiter named Ronald Goldman, kind, athletic, friendly. At 9:30 p.m., Nicole returned home with her children. They were excited, tired, ready for bed. A few hours later, two lives would end in unimaginable violence. It was just after midnight when a neighbor found Nicole's dog, a white Akita, pacing outside, its paws stained with blood. Following the dog led to a horror that would shake the world. Nicole Brown Simpson lay at the base of the front steps, brutally murdered. Her throat was slashed so deep she was nearly decapitated. Nearby, Ronald Goldman, also stabbed repeatedly, blood everywhere, a glove left behind, footprints leading away into the dark. The brutality was shocking, personal, intimate, fueled by rage. And within hours, detectives began connecting the dots. Detectives soon arrived at the Simpson estate, just 2 miles away. They rang the bell, no answer. They scaled the wall. Inside, they found O.J.'s white Ford Bronco parked outside, smeared with blood. A single glove, matching the one at the crime scene, lay near his house. Nicole's ex-husband had suddenly become the prime suspect. Breaking news out of Los Angeles. Nicole Brown Simpson, ex-wife of football legend O.J. Simpson, has been found murdered. Within hours, the story spread like wildfire. The perfect American hero was now accused of the most horrific of crimes. Cameras swarmed Brentwood. Every network, CNN, ABC, NBC, turned its lens toward O.J. Simpson. The public couldn't look away. Police questioned O.J. the next day. He appeared nervous, shaky, defensive. But he denied everything. When asked about the cuts on his hand, he said he'd broken a glass. Still, detectives had evidence. Blood in the car, on the driveway, and on that mysterious glove. The puzzle pieces were aligning, too neatly. Some would later say, by June 17th, the Los Angeles Police Department had gathered enough evidence. A warrant was issued for O.J. Simpson's arrest. The news broke live on every channel. America held its breath. TV static news anchor. Say, O.J. Simpson has been ordered to surrender to police this morning. But when police arrived, O.J. was gone. Silence. Then sound of phone ringing. A simple disappearance. And suddenly, a story that was already big became legendary. What followed next would become one of the most watched moments in television history. A car chase unlike any other, a nation frozen before its screens. But that is another chapter of the story. June 17th, 1994. What began as a murder investigation was about to turn into one of the most unforgettable days in American television history. By morning, Los Angeles police had gathered enough evidence to charge O.J. Simpson with 2 counts of murder. The world waited for the great football hero to turn himself in. But when the time came, O.J. was gone. Music fades out. Static of live news. Broadcast fades in. News anchor. Urgent. O.J. Simpson has failed to surrender to the police as scheduled. Authorities are now actively searching for him. At 11 a.m., detectives arrived at his home to take him into custody. He was supposed to be there, calm, cooperative, ready to face the charges. Instead, what they found was chaos. O.J.'s lawyer, Robert Shapiro, stood stunned. Friends were crying. And O.J., along with his longtime friend Al Cowlings, had vanished. Sound. Police radios crackling. Radio voice. Suspect O.J. Simpson may be traveling in a white Ford Bronco. Within hours, every police unit in Los Angeles was on alert. A manhunt had begun. Not for a stranger, but for one of America's most famous faces. Back at O.J.'s estate, police found something chilling. A letter, part apology, part goodbye, to whom it may concern. First, everyone understand I had nothing to do with Nicole's murder. Don't feel sorry for me. I've had a great life. Please think of the real O.J. and not this lost person. To many, it read like a suicide note. And soon after, reports confirmed O.J. had a gun. He wasn't running to escape. He was running to end it all. 51 p.m. Los Angeles. A white Ford Bronco appears on a freeway in Orange County, heading north. Inside are 2 men, O.J. Simpson and his friend, Al Cowlings. Police spot the vehicle. They approach carefully. Then over the radio, a message no one expected. Radio crackle. This is AC. You guys gotta back off. O.J. has a gun to his head. He's gonna kill himself if you don't let us drive. The chase begins, but not the kind we've seen in movies. It wasn't fast. It wasn't violent. It was slow, painfully slow. The Bronco moved at barely 35 miles per hour. Yet, behind it, more than 20 police cars followed. Above, helicopters hovered. And across America, millions of people watched, live. Every network cut to the chase. NBC interrupted the NBA Finals. CNN, CBS, ABC, all switched to the Bronco. For nearly 2 hours, America was hypnotized by a single white truck moving through the night, as bizarre as it sounds. People began lining the freeways, waving at the car as it passed. Some shouted his name in support. Others held signs demanding justice. This wasn't just a chase anymore. It was a reflection of a nation divided. For Black America, O.J. wasn't just a suspect. He was a symbol of success in a country that had long punished men who looked like him. For others, the evidence seemed clear. He was guilty. 2 worlds watched the same event and saw 2 different truths. 8:09 p.m. After a surreal 60-mile pursuit, the Bronco finally pulled into O.J.'s Brentwood estate. O.J. sat in the back seat, gun still in hand. He refused to come out. Negotiators spoke softly through a megaphone, pleading with him to surrender. Friends arrived, shouting encouragement. Then, silence. At 8:50 p.m., the car door opened. O.J. stepped out, trembling, defeated. He held a framed photo of his children. And just like that, the chase was over. He was arrested without violence. The crowd outside cheered. America exhaled. Over the next few days, police collected mountains of evidence. Blood samples, hair fibers, DNA, shoe prints, all seemingly linking O.J. to the murders. The white Bronco was stained with blood. His socks, blood. The glove at his house, blood. It was, investigators said, the most damning case they'd ever seen. But O.J. maintained his innocence. And when his defense team assembled, America realized this wasn't going to be an ordinary trial. Robert Shapiro, Johnny Cochran, F. Lee Bailey, Alan Dershowitz, a lineup of the most powerful defense attorneys in America. They called themselves the Dream Team. Their mission: to prove O.J. Simpson was framed. Every day, the story grew. Tabloids exploded with headlines. TV talk shows dissected every frame of the chase. And O.J., even from behind bars, became the biggest name in the world. While the media storm raged, two families grieved quietly. Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman were laid to rest. Their loved ones heartbroken, lost in a blur of cameras. Outside, the world argued about guilt and innocence. Inside, two families faced the raw truth. Nothing would bring their children back. The case had already taken 2 lives. But in the months to come, it would take much more. Friendships would fracture, public trust in the police would shatter, and the nation would question everything it thought it knew about justice. It was no longer just about 2 victims. It was about America itself, its justice system, its biases, and its obsession with celebrity. Prosecutors claimed the evidence was undeniable. The defense said it was contaminated, planted, or mishandled. At the center of it all was one question that divided the world. Was O.J. Simpson a murderer or a victim of his own fame and race? October 3rd, 1994, Los Angeles. The stage was set for the trial of the century. Television cameras lined the streets. Reporters camped outside the courthouse. The prosecution prepared to present what they called irrefutable evidence. The defense, ready to dismantle it all. It was no longer about what O.J. had done, but about what America believed. January 24th, 1995. The world's eyes turned to one courtroom in Los Angeles. The defendant, O.J. Simpson. The charge, double murder. The trial, unlike anything America had ever seen. For 9 long months, this courtroom would become a stage, and the world would watch every word, every gesture, every breath. Next, inside the courtroom, where race, fame, science, and power collided. And history was rewritten before our eyes. On one side stood the prosecution, led by Marcia Clark and Christopher Darden, 2 determined attorneys convinced that O.J. Simpson was a killer. Marcia Clark. The evidence will show that the defendant is guilty of 2 brutal murders. On the other side, the defense, O.J.'s dream team, Johnny Cochran, charismatic and bold, Robert Shapiro, the strategist, F. Lee Bailey, the cross-examiner, Alan Dershowitz, the legal scholar. The prosecution believed their case was airtight. Blood from the victims found on O.J.'s car, on his driveway, on his socks. DNA tests matched O.J. Simpson. 1,000,000,000 to 1 probability it wasn't him. But there was a problem. The evidence chain, the way it was handled, was messy. Blood samples weren't properly labeled. Detectives carried vials in their pockets, and one man's name kept coming up again and again. Detective Mark Foreman. Their mission was simple: create reasonable doubt. Their strategy: attack the evidence, question the police, and turn the trial into something bigger than O.J., a trial about race and justice in America. Foreman was the officer who found the infamous glove at O.J.'s home, the glove that matched the one at the murder scene. He looked like the perfect witness, until the defense dug deeper. Johnny Cochran, Detective Furman. Have you ever used the N-word to describe African Americans? Furman. I invoked the Fifth Amendment. Recordings later revealed Furman had used racial slurs, often viciously. He had bragged about framing suspects. And now, the defense had their weapon. Outside the courthouse, lines were drawn. For many white Americans, O.J. looked guilty beyond question. But for many black Americans, the trial wasn't about one man. It was about decades of police injustice. Just 3 years earlier, Los Angeles had exploded in riots after the police beating of Rodney King. Now, the same department was under the spotlight again. Accused of racial bias, O.J. became more than a defendant. He became a symbol of pain, pride, and protest. The question wasn't just whether O.J. was guilty. It was whether the LAPD, long accused of racism and corruption, could be trusted at all. Then came the moment that would define the trial. Prosecutor, Marsha Clark. Mr. Simpson, would you please try on the gloves? O.J. stood up. He pulled the gloves over his hands. Slowly. They looked tight. Too tight. He struggled, twisting, shaking his head. Johnny Cochran. Ladies and gentlemen, if it doesn't fit, you must acquit. It was a simple line, but devastating. From that moment, the jury's faith in the evidence began to crumble. Every day brought new battles. Experts fought over DNA. Witnesses contradicted each other. The media spun every twist into headlines. Cameras captured it all. The tension, the tears, the arrogance. It wasn't just a trial anymore. It was entertainment. And through it all, O.J. sat quietly. Sometimes smiling, sometimes stone-faced. To some, he looked confident. To others, cold. More than 100 million people tuned in at some point during the trial. It became a national ritual. Morning headlines, daytime analysis, late-night jokes. O.J. was no longer a person. He was a story America couldn't stop watching. Angshaw. Did he do it, or was he framed? Tonight, the latest from the O.J. circus. A tragedy had become prime-time drama. Johnny Cochran. Something is wrong in the way this case has been handled. Something deeply wrong. Narrator. Cochran's closing argument was part sermon, part performance. He painted O.J. as the victim of a corrupt system, a black man targeted by racist cops and blind prosecutors. Narrator. He didn't just ask the jury to doubt the evidence. He asked them to doubt America itself. After months of testimony, the jury retired to deliberate. 9 women, 3 men, mostly African American. Everyone expected days, maybe weeks of debate. Instead, they returned after just 4 hours. October 3rd, 1995. The world stopped. Schools paused classes. Stock markets slowed. An estimated 100 million people tuned in to hear 2 words. Clerk. We the jury, in the above entitled Action, find the defendant, Orenthal James Simpson, not guilty of the crime of murder. Music swells. One note, sharp and heavy. Then silence. In an instant, the courtroom erupted. O.J. collapsed in relief. Nicole's and Goldman's families wept in disbelief. Outside, cheers and screams filled the streets. It was a verdict that divided America. To some, justice had been served. To others, it had been denied. O.J. Simpson walked out of court a free man. But freedom came with a price. The public was torn, the media relentless, his reputation shattered forever. The families of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman were left with only grief. Their loved ones were gone, and in their eyes, justice had failed. The O.J. trial exposed deep wounds about race, fame, money, and truth. It changed how America saw its justice system. It changed how we saw celebrity. And it changed television. Forever. But for O.J. Simpson, this wasn't the end. His freedom would be temporary. His peace, impossible. The years that followed would bring new scandals, lawsuits, and one more shocking fall from grace. Next, the verdict aftermath. The civil trial and the downfall of O.J. Simpson. October 3rd, 1995. O.J. Simpson, once America's hero, now its most controversial man, walked out of court a free man. But outside those walls, the world he returned to would never be the same. Freedom wasn't victory. It was exile. The verdict had divided the country, and now it divided O.J.'s life. The man once adored for his charm and success was now haunted by whispers of guilt. Endorsements gone, friends gone, the mansion sold. Everywhere he went, cameras followed, not in admiration, but in accusation. Some called him the Teflon Man. Others called him the murderer who got away. And yet, O.J. kept smiling for the cameras, golfing, signing autographs, living as though the past didn't exist. But behind that smile, something darker lingered. The story wasn't over. In 1996, the families of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman filed a civil lawsuit accusing O.J. of wrongful death. This time, there were no cameras allowed, no dramatic speeches, just facts. And this time, the result was different. The jury found O.J. liable for both deaths. He was ordered to pay $33.5 million in damages. It wasn't a criminal conviction, but for the victims' families, it was the closest thing to justice they would ever get. And for O.J., it marked the beginning of the end, once adored by millions. O.J. now lived on the edge of fame, not celebrated, but chased. Every smile he gave, every move he made was judged. He released a ghostwritten book, If I Did It, meant to be hypothetical. The public was outraged. Stores refused to sell it. Publishers pulled out. It was as if he couldn't stop living inside the shadows of that night. As if the ghost of Nicole and Ron followed him everywhere. By the mid-2000s, O.J. was broke. He survived on NFL pensions, money untouchable by civil courts. But the man who once had everything couldn't live with being forgotten. Then came September 13th, 2007, Las Vegas, a hotel room, and one final desperate mistake. That night, O.J. and a group of men stormed into a hotel room, trying to reclaim sports memorabilia he claimed was stolen from him. He was armed, angry, and caught on tape. To O.J., it was about reclaiming his legacy. To the law, it was armed robbery and kidnapping. Judge: Mr. Simpson, you are sentenced to 33 years in prison. The irony was cruel. 33 years. The same number he owed the victims' families. O.J. spent nearly a decade behind bars at Lovelock Correctional Center in Nevada. Gone were the designer suits and Hollywood smiles. Gone were the cameras. All that remained was reflection. Fellow inmates described him as calm, polite, even friendly. But when asked about the murders, O.J. would always say the same thing. I didn't do it. October 1st, 2017. After serving 9 years, O.J. Simpson was granted parole. At 70 years old, he stepped back into the world, a free man once again. But the world had moved on. Social media, new scandals, new generations. For most, O.J. was just a memory from another era. He spent his remaining years quietly in Las Vegas. Golf, family, Twitter posts. A strange calm after decades of chaos. But the same question from 1994, never truly went away. O.J. Simpson's story is not just the story of a man, but of a country. It exposed everything America tried to hide: racism, celebrity obsession, the power of media, and the fragile balance between justice and spectacle. He was once the face of success, the proof that fame could break barriers, and then he became the warning that fame can destroy everything it touches. Maybe that's the tragedy of O.J. Simpson, not just what happened, but what could have been. A man who had it all, lost it all, and spent the rest of his life chasing the image of who he used to be. Some say he got away with murder, others say he was framed. But one truth remains: no one ever truly walked away from that night unscarred. The victims, the families, the nation, and O.J. himself.